My parents publicly humiliated my kids at Christmas dinner, saying they weren't welcome there. So, I quietly packed up my family and drove home. A week later, my mom called, sobbing about her leaky roof, and that's when I knew I was finally free. It was Christmas Day, and the festive cheer vanished the moment my mom announced, loud enough for everyone to hear, that my children were welcome to receive gifts because they just didn't belong in this family anymore. The air in the room turned ice cold. My wife and I exchanged a look, a silent agreement passing between us. We gathered our kids, wished everyone a Merry Christmas with forced smiles, and left. But the real gift that year wasn't under the tree. It was the peace I found a week later when my mom called, desperate and tearful about her roof, and I simply said no. Christmas at my parents' house used to be something special. Growing up, it was the highlight of the year, the smell of pine needles and gingerbread, the cozy decorations my mom insisted on putting up since Thanksgiving, the chaotic energy of all my cousins running around, hyped up on sugar and anticipation. It was loud, messy, and imperfectly perfect. But somewhere along the line, things shifted. Maybe it was when I got married, or maybe when my wife, Sarah, and I had kids, our two wonderful, boisterous, and yes, sometimes messy children, Leo and Lily. Whatever it was, the welcome mat at my parents' house started feeling a little less welcoming, especially for my little family. It wasn't like they were overtly hostile, not at first. It was more like a subtle chill, little comments here and there. My mom would make remarks about how active Leo was, which I knew was code for rambunctious and hard to handle. Lily, who was a bit shy, would get overlooked, almost as if she was invisible. Sarah, bless her patient heart, always tried to smooth things over, to find the good, to make sure the kids didn't pick up on the undercurrent of something. I, on the other hand, was in denial for far too long. I wanted things to be like they used to be. I wanted that warm, fuzzy Christmas feeling for my kids, the one I remembered so fondly. So, I made excuses for my parents. Oh, mom's just stressed about the cooking, dad's just tired after working all week, they're just getting older, you know. Deep down, though, a knot of unease was tightening in my stomach with each passing holiday. The comments got less subtle, the snubs became more pointed, and this year was the breaking point. It was Christmas Day, we arrived at my parents' house, arms laden with gifts, smiles plastered on our faces. The usual Christmas scene unfolded, relatives milling around, the scent of roasting turkey filling the air, carols playing softly in the background. Initially, it felt almost normal, almost like I'd been worrying over nothing. We exchanged polite greetings, the kids rushed off to join their cousins in what was traditionally the kids' zone, the downstairs den that my parents had begrudgingly childproofed years ago when we were all younger. Sarah went to help my mom in the kitchen, and I ended up in the living room with my dad and my older brother, Mark, making small talk about football and the weather, the usual guy stuff. Then came the gift exchange. This was always a big deal in my family. My mom prided herself on being a thoughtful gift giver, which usually translated to expensive and, frankly, often impractical presents. Still, it was part of the tradition, and the kids always looked forward to it. One by one, family members were called up to receive their gifts from under the towering, perfectly symmetrical Christmas tree that my dad always meticulously decorated. My nieces and nephews went first, squealing with delight as they unwrapped toys and games and gadgets. Then it was the adults' turn. Even Sarah got a lovely cashmere scarf that my mom actually picked out herself, a small olive branch, I thought hopefully. Finally, it was the kids' turn. My cousins' children were called up, their faces flushed with excitement. Leo and Lily were bouncing on the balls of their feet, their eyes wide with anticipation, glancing at me and Sarah with those hopeful, innocent looks that just got you. And then it happened. My mom, standing by the tree with a stack of beautifully wrapped presents in her arms, paused. She looked around the room, her gaze sweeping over Leo and Lily, who were now practically vibrating with excitement. And then, in a voice that was just a little too loud, just a little too pointed, she said, "Okay, everyone else has their presents, that's it for the children this year." Silence descended, you could have heard a pin drop. Even the boisterous chatter of the cousins downstairs seemed to fade away. All eyes were on my mom, and then slowly, inexorably, they turned to Leo and Lily, my kids. Their faces, I will never, as long as I live, forget their faces in that moment. The light just went out of them. Leo's lower lip started to tremble, Lily's eyes welled up with tears, and she burrowed her face into Sarah's side. "Mom," I said, my voice dangerously low, "what did you just say?" She actually had the audacity to look surprised. "What? Oh, it's nothing, honey. We just didn't get gifts for Leo and Lily this year." She waved a dismissive hand as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You know, we just thought, well, they don't really fit in anymore, do they?" "Fit in?" Sarah repeated, her voice tight with barely suppressed anger. "What is that supposed to mean? They're your grandchildren, for God's sake." My dad, who had been conspicuously silent up until this point, finally spoke up. "Now, Susan," he said to my mom, his voice placating, "let's not make a scene." Then he turned to us, offering a weak, apologetic smile. "You know how your mother is, always a bit dramatic." "Dramatic?" I exploded, finally losing my carefully constructed facade of politeness. "Mom just publicly announced to the entire family that she doesn't want to give presents to my kids because they don't fit in, and you call that dramatic?" "Well, they are different," my mom insisted, her chin jutting out stubbornly. "They're louder, more energetic, they don't really follow the rules, do they?" "They're children, Mom," I said, my voice cracking with a mixture of fury and hurt. "They're 7 and 5 years old. What rules are they breaking? Being kids?" You can click on share and more to see if there is a part 2. Part 2. the argument escalated quickly, as these things tend to do. Voices were raised, accusations were thrown, and old resentments bubbled to the surface. My brother Mark predictably sided with my parents, muttering something about us being too sensitive and making a mountain out of a molehill. My cousins and their spouses, sensing a family meltdown, discreetly started to filter out of the living room, muttering about needing to check on the kids or refill their drinks. Through it all, Leo and Lily stayed glued to Sarah and me, their small bodies trembling, their eyes wide and confused. It was like watching them shrink into themselves, their spirits visibly dimming with every hurtful word that was flung around the room. Finally, Sarah put a hand on my arm, her touch surprisingly firm despite her trembling. "That's enough," she said, her voice quiet but steel-edged. "We're leaving." I didn't argue, I didn't even hesitate. I just nodded, relief washing over me in a dizzying wave. "You're right," I said. "Let's go." We gathered up Leo and Lily, who clung to us like limpets. We mumbled a hasty Merry Christmas to the remaining family members, ignoring my mom's sputtering protests and my dad's weak attempts to talk things over. We just walked out. The car ride home was silent, thick with unspoken emotions. Leo and Lily eventually fell asleep, exhausted and emotionally drained. Sarah and I just stared straight ahead, the festive lights of the city blurring into streaks of color through the rain-streaked windshield. That night, after we tucked the kids into bed, Sarah and I sat in the kitchen. The silence between us was heavy and charged. Finally, I spoke. "I'm done," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "I'm just done." Sarah nodded slowly, her eyes meeting mine, understanding etched in their depth. "Me too," she said softly. "This has to stop." For years, I had been the good son, the dutiful son, the son who always showed up, always helped out, always smoothed things over, and crucially, the son who always paid for things. My parents weren't poor exactly, they owned their house, they had their pensions. They weren't exactly struggling, but they were, let's just say, frugal. Okay, let's be honest, they were cheap, painfully, embarrassingly cheap. And I, in my misguided attempts to be a good son, had enabled it. Whenever something broke at their house, the washing machine, the dishwasher, the leaky faucet, the incessantly rattling garage door, who did they call? Not a repairman, they called me. And who ended up footing the bill? Me, every single time. "Oh, honey, the roof is leaking again," my mom would say, her voice dripping with woe. "Your father's back is acting up, he can't possibly climb up there to fix it himself. And you know how expensive roof repairs are these days." And like a fool, I would cave. I would call a roofer, I would get quotes, I would write the check. And my parents would sigh in relief, pat me on the back metaphorically. Of course, they weren't big on physical affection, and life would go on until the next thing broke. It wasn't just house repairs, either. It was everything: dinner out, my treat, birthday presents taken care of, even little things like groceries or gas money when they were running low. It was a constant low-level drain on our finances. But I had justified it to myself as helping out family. However, after what happened at Christmas, after seeing the hurt in my children's eyes, something inside me snapped. The good son died that day, and in his place, something harder, something angrier started to take root. "I'm not paying for anything anymore," I said to Sarah, my voice firm. "Not another dime, not another leaky faucet, not another broken appliance, not another anything." Sarah looked at me, her eyes searching mine. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. "They're going to lose it." "Let them," I said, a grim satisfaction creeping into my voice. "Let them lose it. Maybe it's time they learn to, I don't know, pay for their own damn roof for once." The first call came a week later. It was my mom, of course, and she was distraught. Actually, distraught doesn't even begin to cover it. She was practically hysterical. "Honey," she wailed into the phone, her voice choked with sobs, "the roof, oh, honey, the roof is just. It's terrible. It's leaking everywhere. We woke up this morning, and there's water just pouring in all over the living room. We've got buckets everywhere, but it's just getting worse." I listened to her dramatic monologue, a cold knot of something, maybe satisfaction, maybe just numbness, forming in my chest. "That sounds bad, Mom," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Bad?" she shrieked. "Bad doesn't even begin to describe it. The ceiling is going to collapse, the furniture is ruined. We don't know what to do." "Have you called a roofer?" I asked, still keeping my voice even. "A roofer?" she gasped, as if I had suggested something utterly outlandish. "Honey, roofers are so expensive. You know we can't afford that right now. That's why I'm calling you. You always know what to do, you always help us out." There it was, the expectation, the entitlement, the utter breathtaking lack of self-awareness. It was all there, laid bare in her tearful, manipulative plea. And for the first time, maybe in my entire life, I didn't cave. I didn't jump to fix it, I didn't reach for my checkbook. I just stood my ground. "Mom," I said, my voice still calm, almost detached, "I'm sorry to hear about your roof. That sounds really stressful." "Stressful?" she wailed again. "It's a disaster, honey. You have to help us. Please, we're begging you." I repeated, taking a deep breath, steeling myself against the years of ingrained guilt and obligation that were screaming at me. You can click on share and more to see if there is a part 3. Part 3. Give in, just fix it to make it all go away, I said to my mom. "I'm not going to pay for your roof repair." There was a stunned, ringing silence on the other end of the line. I could practically hear her brain short-circuiting, trying to process the impossible words that had just come out of my mouth. What did you say?" she finally stammered, her voice trembling. Did I? Did I hear you right? You're not going to help us? That's right, Mom, I said, my voice still steady, still calm, but now edged with a newfound resolve. I'm not going to pay for your roof repair. You're going to have to figure it out yourselves. Another silence followed, longer this time. Then, slowly, like a wounded animal lashing out in pain, her voice changed. The tears vanished, replaced by a cold, hard anger that was even more chilling than her earlier hysteria. You ungrateful, selfish son, she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. After everything we've done for you, after raising you, feeding you, clothing you, this is how you repay us? By leaving us to rot in our own leaking house? Mom, I sighed, the old familiar weariness creeping back in, but this time it was different. This time, it wasn't just weariness, it was detachment. I was watching a play unfold, a play I had seen countless times before, and I was finally stepping out of my assigned role. Mom, you chose to humiliate my children at Christmas. You made it clear that they weren't welcome. Well, fine. I'm taking you at your word. My family and I are no longer welcome to be your financial safety net either. How dare you? She shrieked, her voice rising to a deafening pitch. How dare you compare a little misunderstanding at Christmas to our actual, real-life emergency? You're being ridiculous, petty. You're just punishing us because you're still upset about those silly presents. It wasn't about the presents, Mom, I said, my voice hardening. It was about how you treated my children. It was about the message you sent them, and to us. And yes, Mom, there are consequences for actions. This is one of them. Consequences? She spat. You think you're teaching us a lesson? You think you're punishing us? You're punishing yourselves, you idiot. We're your parents. You owe us. No, Mom, I said finally, completely breaking free from the tangled web of guilt and obligation that had bound me for so long. No, I don't. I don't owe you anything. I've paid my dues and then some. And then I did something I had never done before, I hung up. I hung up the phone on my mother. The silence that followed was profound. It was the silence of a dam breaking, of a long-held breath finally being released. It was the silence of freedom. Sarah was watching me, her expression unreadable. Are you okay? She asked softly after a long moment. I looked at her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled, a genuine smile, not a forced, polite smile, not a weary, resigned smile, but a real, honest-to-God smile that reached my eyes and lifted a weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. Yeah, I said, the word feeling strange and foreign and utterly wonderfully true on my tongue. Yeah, I think I finally am. The fallout was messy. There were more phone calls, of course, raging phone calls from my mom, pleading phone calls from my dad, even a surprisingly reasonable phone call from my brother Mark trying to mediate and see both sides. I held my ground. I repeated my mantra calmly and firmly, I'm not paying for it. You need to figure it out yourselves. They tried everything, guilt trips, emotional manipulation, veiled threats, even outright begging. Nothing worked. I was a brick wall, a polite, calm, but utterly immovable brick wall. Eventually, they stopped calling. The silence stretched out week after week, month after month. Christmas came and went. We spent it at home, just the four of us, Leo, Lily, Sarah, and me. The kids were still a little subdued, but slowly, gradually, they started to heal. We made new traditions. We focused on creating our own joy, our own warmth, our own imperfectly perfect Christmas. And something amazing happened. Without the constant drain of my parents' financial needs, without the emotional weight of their expectations and criticisms, our lives blossomed. We had more money, yes, but it was more than that. We had more energy, more space, more peace. I started to rediscover hobbies I had long neglected. Sarah started taking art classes again, something she had always dreamed of doing but never had the time or money for. Leo and Lily, they just thrived. They became more confident, more outgoing, more themselves. It wasn't easy, of course. There were moments of guilt, moments of doubt, moments when the old ingrained programming would kick in and I'd almost reach for the phone to call my mom and offer to just help out a little. But then I would remember Leo and Lily's faces on Christmas Day. I would remember the cold, dismissive words, the casual cruelty, and the guilt would fade, replaced by a fierce protectiveness, a quiet, unwavering determination to build a better life for my children, a life free from the toxic undercurrents of my family of origin. It's been 2 years now, 2 years since that Christmas, 2 years since I hung up the phone on my mother and hung up on the good son act forever. My parents and I are estranged. We haven't spoken, haven't seen each other. Mark calls occasionally, usually to relay some dramatic update about my parents' latest woes or to try half-heartedly to get me to reconsider. I listen politely, offer non-committal responses, and then I change the subject. I don't know if we'll ever reconcile. Honestly, I don't know if I even want to. The silence, the space, the freedom, it's been too precious, too hard one to risk losing again. Maybe someday, when Leo and Lily are older, when they can make their own choices about their relationships with their grandparents, maybe then things will change. Maybe then forgiveness will be possible. Maybe then healing can truly begin for all of us. But for now, there is peace. There is quiet. There is the gentle, steady hum of a life finally, gloriously my own. And sometimes, in the still of the evening, when the kids are asleep and Sarah and I are sitting together, just being, I can almost hear the faint, sweet sound of that leaky roof finally being fixed by someone else with someone else's money, and it sounds beautiful.